Please welcome Mark Adams.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. And it's a real honor and a privilege to be here. And I just want to say everything I'm going to do for reasons that will become clear is going to be I'm going to try and make it as entertaining and as Friday as possible. But I really can't stress that this is, in my opinion, serious business. Like, it's not a joke. It's not like a nice to have. It's the stuff that used to be on the sides and on the edges. And now I firmly believe it's in the middle. And I'll tell you the story about Vice and how Vice applied these principles. But really, I'm just telling that as an allegory for all the businesses that we now work with across all of our lines of business that, Vice Media, Virtue, our creative agency, et cetera, et cetera. So let's dig in. If this clicker thing works, yes, amazing, we're running. By the way, I'm never going to get through this presentation. It's just not going to happen. So do me a favor, just add me on LinkedIn, Mark Adams Vice. I'm also going to need your cooperation at a certain point in this presentation, and because unfortunately we can't really see each other, so it's a bit weird. But if you would add me, we're gonna need your. You'll see in a minute. We're going to play a game where basically you're going to have to tell me what you are into when you're not at work, which just sounds a bit dodgy. But anyway, so. Look, as my good friend just said, it's not a great time to be a company that was born in the 20th century trying to survive and thrive and grow in the 20th. And look, Byron Sharp, has told us, in unexplicit terms what matters in brand building and what doesn't. I'm going to contend some of that. I'm also going to firmly agree with some of it. But the bottom line of it is a lot of brands are not growing anymore. And worse than that, it's got to the point where they are shrinking. And for lots of CPGs, 90% of their growth, not their revenue, but their growth is acquisitions and M&A. So this is a really, really interesting time. I would actually contend it's the most exciting time to be a CMO or in your position. If you're sitting in a major CPG or major company, seriously start looking at all the little incumbents, the little ankle biters that are coming up, because it might be a good idea to take some stock in one of those and go there just to start with a bit of provocation. Anyway, we're going to have a deep therapy session. I promise this is going to be fast. It's going to be furious, but it'll be fun. But I mean it when I say it's hard business as well. So here we go. Our growth about 7 years ago had run out. We were really in a deep problem. Now, see if you see yourself or any of the brands that you manage in this situation. We had sacrificed everything at the altar of scale. Do you remember when you were at Cannes and there was those guys on those boats, the ad tech people, and they were there drinking champagne, they had the biggest parties and stuff. You notice they haven't been there recently, because everyone was so hyped about the opportunity of personalization at scale. And everyone was so into this trend. It was just like the new Betamax or the new mini disc or, the new VR or whatever. It was what we all got hooked on. And it was one of the biggest missteers in the history of brand building ever. Not just in my opinion. I think you can see this now. The biggest brands, Adidas, I know, who are here today, openly coming out and saying we overinvested in that type of technology. Now we're going back to brand building. And I think that everybody who's senior enough and has had enough drink in them will say to them, yeah, we got too excited by ad tech and we went for this scale play. We'd read How Brands Grow. We thought the ad tech solution was the answer, and it wasn't. And we were exactly the same. And so basically in the pursuit of scale, we had lost relevance. I get briefs every single day that say this. I don't even need to look at the brief. It's just details on top of this. Because every brief is the same. It's like, oh, we kind of grew and now we don't know who we are and we're losing share again and we've lost relevance and younger people don't like us. We need to age down the pipe of our consumer. Seen it 100 times, right? So here's the situation. We literally realized we were locked in category conventions and we were unable to grow. And so this is not a good place to be. I'm sure you've all been there. So how do we, as smart, emotionally intelligent, hopefully, passionate marketeers and do what we do? I believe that we are looking for Michelin star insights. That's what I think it all starts with. Call me old-fashioned. I'm actually one of these people that loves to read their David Ogilvy from back in the day, and it's never changed. It never will change. We are truffle pigs looking for immortal insights, and that's what we have to do in order to do what we need to do next. And so I'm going to ask you guys: does defining your audience in broadest possible terms, i.e. socio-demographically, double or halve your chances of success later on? Peter Thiel, not a very nice guy, but a very smart guy. First investor in Facebook, owns Palantir, evil empire man, but very, very smart guy, PayPal mafia. He talks about this idea of every decision at the beginning either halves or doubles your chance of success later on. So let's go to one of the most foundational things that 20th century brands still believe and is in every single brand pyramid and every single brand playbook that I ever see from all these big companies. And I can tell you right now why I sit on the board of Gymshark, because they're not playing that game at all. and they're completely decimating to 1.5 billion valuation in about 7 years, because they don't do that. And one of the things is, when you realize that you're trying to define people socio-demographically, you end up pretty much here. On the left-hand side, you have a 72-year-old male. His name, obviously, he's the Prince of Wales. He lives outside London in Windsor. He has 2 children. And yeah, that's his vibe. And on the right-hand side, you have a 72-year-old male. He lives in a place called Windsor. He has 2 children. You can see where I'm going with this, right? The Prince of Darkness and the Prince of Wales are socio-demographically the same. So my point to you, and I mean this, I was the chief digital officer at the biggest talent agency in the world. So I was working with Lady Gaga and launching films and albums and stuff, right? And I'm going to talk about why that's a powerful form of distinct memory structure building, as Byron Sharp would say later. And it's actually better than advertising. But the reason why this is, I never heard anyone in Hollywood talk about 18 to 24-year-old females in these 3 markets. Only brands and their agencies do this. And it's the number one thing. Lubomira Roche from L'Oreal, one of my personal mentors and geniuses, I think, of this world, won WFA Marketeer of the Year last year. I think it says a lot when a chief digital officer wins Marketeer of the Year and not a chief marketing officer, just putting it out there. But she says that demographic segmentation is the original sin of meaningless work that no creative countermeasure can overcome. And I truly believe it. You can sometimes create lead and turn it into gold, but it's very rare. And so when you start with that, you're on a downer from the very beginning. And then what you have is a bad strategy that you scale. So what we said at Vice 7 years ago was give up trying to land a solid creative punch on a socio-demographic target. And I cannot stress this enough. I'm trying to deliver this in a fun way, but this is deadly serious. If you're doing this, it's an unbelievable way of going against all of the physics of the internet. You're essentially producing negative network effects. And the internet is an interconnected set of networks, and you're looking to create positive network effects. So basically, this is what our audience was telling us. We have 380 million people a month coming to Vice now, and they're very clear with us. Don't talk to us about all the things that are in that brief. Don't address us by gender, sexual identity, economic status, age, occupation. And yet every brief starts with the stuff at the bottom. Talk about personality, values, hobbies, passions. The only reason brands don't know how to do this is because currently no provider or technology solution, or they're not looking hard enough, or they haven't even thought about it much to realize that actually the way that people define themselves is the way that you should really go after them. And you can still get to scale, I promise you, because I want you to think right now, oh, that's niche, but I promise it isn't. So if you want people to care at the end, don't make shit decisions at the start, right? So we went back to what we were originally, Vice was originally called Voice, but we were sued by another company and we had to drop the O. So we went back to what was the original purpose of the company. And the original purpose of the company was to give a voice to these new networks that were forming because of this thing called the internet. And so we went back to that. And we mapped onto it all the stuff we'd learned from the Byron Sharp model of scale. So we essentially came up with this new model. And so principle number 1 of this new model is be with the audience, not at the audience. And the reason for this is because the fastest brands in the world are growing with their audience, not just at the behest of their audience. And so, AKA define the audience as they define themselves. Now, this is the bit where I need your help. I'm going to go on LinkedIn right now. Just add me and just tell me, in the spirit of Friday afternoon and, this very fast and quite insane presentation, tell me, what are you into? Who are you really? Like, beyond the bullshit of your title, if we were having a couple of drinks in the Croisette, who are you? I'll give you an example. I'm into electronic music because I'm from Essex, and every single person from Essex is a failed DJ. Now, that is a true demographic segmentation. But I'm also into cycling. I'm into, all sorts of other things. So let's have a look at what you've got. Okay, we've got another DJ already. Thank you. I'm not going to name names here, by the way, but amazing. We've got amazing. We've got someone who's a chef, or cooking at least, baking. Okay, so we've got. I'm not getting any more. Boxing. Jesus, I wouldn't mess with you. Okay, wow. We've got hill. Okay, hill running. That sounds extreme. Trail and hill running. Wow. Adrenaline sport. Wow. Okay. We've got chess. I've got that one. I've got my chess set somewhere. Chess. Okay, amazing. The point is, already we've got 3 people saying cycling, 2 people saying some kind of music, people saying baking, cooking, etc. We don't even know each other, and we're not even in a physical space, and we're already starting to prove the one foundational truth that usurps all tactics. The strategy that sits above every single tactic is that the internet is a clustering of networks. It was the first piece of media, the first technology ever invented that didn't have advertisers in mind. The radio, TV, all of these other things had advertisers in mind. Google and Facebook had to distend the physics of the internet to put advertisers in there in a seamless or semi-seamless way. But the bottom line of it is we're already clustering, just like we would in a room. People who love Game of Thrones would find each other. People who love music would find each other. People who love cycling, mammals, middle-aged men in lycra, that's me, would find each other. So here's the most interesting thing. When you come back to this, you get sanity. The internet is an interconnected set of networks. That's all it is. And we get so excited about the new, is it TikTok right now? But it was Snapchat last year, and the year before it was Facebook Carousel, and the year before that it was whatever Twitter was rolling out. We are so in the weeds of tactics that we have forgotten the first principles of the strategy. And the strategy is create network effects from an architecture that is in itself an interconnected set of networks. When you get to that, you realize why going after extremely broad targeting is a good solution, but it's also something you should do later in a process, and something else needs to come first. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what that is. So let's remind ourselves, the companies that are born in the 20th century not been doing too well, but yet these companies are. And yet every single one of these, so Gymshark, which I advise on, a few of these I've either worked on or advised on, and you guys will know, you've got Aesop, Lululemon, all of them, when you receive a brief from them, this is not something that I'm out of NDA by saying, they all say, yes, we're looking for scale. Absolutely, we need to grow. We need to bring new users and light buyers in the top of the funnel. Absolutely, we need to do what Byron Sharp says. But before that, we want to advance and tell stories with an audience. And so they all have, if you look on that screen, they all have their tribes, their communities. And if you look at the brands that are still outperforming the market, despite being born in the 20th century, they're the same. You get a brief from Apple, which we have done. We won an Emmy for the Apple Beats Bounce advert, and with TBWA. Now, they say we're going after the Soho House creative class because, by the way, if you remember Soho House, you can't sit with your Dell or your HP in that place. You just can't. It's just not an acceptable thing to do, right? And so what you realize is every single one of these brands that has outperformed the S&P 500 still has community storytelling at its heart, and then it blows it out using media later. So my thing is, I'll just give you a good example. Lululemon came to us. They said, look, growth is flatlining. We need to reposition. We've become too, I'm going to use their language here, not my language, yummy mummy. We've become too, we're at risk of being and I'm going to use their language, not mine, Karen brand. We're going to be the white middle class lady in London who would be in Richmond Park pushing a pram, like, super rich, right? And, younger 19-year-olds say, less white, black and Asian, BAME, people were like, no, that's not for me. Even if it was at a price point that was for me, I still wouldn't buy it because it's not cool anymore, right? And so this was the insight. And so we had to overcome this. And, I said, as I always say, show me your segmentation. And this is what they did. And then, there's always this aha, the insight, the test for a good insight is the hairs on your arm go up, right? And I saw this, I was like, oh, of course you're not growing. You're going after men, all men. You're literally one of your segments. So we were like, okay, how do we deal with this? So we used, we have a team internal, a company that we work with very closely called Codec, CODEC.ai. And they basically do machine learning and artificial intelligence. They listen to all those networks that I told you about. They're literally listening to all those cultural networks, the way that people define themselves. So they went out and did their thing, and they came back to us and said, if you want to reposition Lululemon, here is how you grow and reposition the brand. And we were like, what? How the hell is Lululemon going to speak to hip hop? How is it going to speak to arts and crafts and adrenaline? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then they said, well, it's all built in the equity of the brand. They showed us this. On the left-hand side, you have literally the equity of the brand. It's a yoga brand, not an athleisure brand. It's about breathing and flow. It's about meditation. It's about letting go. It's about non-violence. And then you realize that those expressions, breathing and flow, is an expression that comes up literally thousands of times a day in the hip-hop conversation. Because if you're an amazing rapper, it's because you've got amazing flow. And if you're really good at what you do, it's because you've got incredible breathing. And so at a certain level of that conversation, people know, man, that guy's got incredible breathing. That girl's got incredible breathing. And that is how you link that. Those bridges, those dotted lines, that's what we call it, Vice, an equity bridge. That's how we identify a community with a unique equity of the brand that we're partnering with at the time, or we're working with as a creative agency. And we build an equity bridge, and we bring that growth over the bridge. We put the content across and bring the growth back. And so basically we started to do this. The platform was called This Is Yoga. I'm not going to show you the content, but I'd be happy to send it over. It's beautiful film. It was very well executed, but I hate to say this, it was going to be a success no matter how it was executed, because strategically it was absolutely on point, and it was going to reposition that brand and introduce it to loads of new communities that it could grow from. And then don't forget, we're going to do the 50% of population stuff and blast CPM and efficient reach and frequency, like Byron Sharp says. At the end, we don't have to do one or the other. We can do both. So this is where people get it twisted. They're so wrapped up in the orthodoxy of how brands grow. They forget that you can tell stories, because the distinct memory structure aspect of Byron Sharp means you have to build a distinct memory structure. So build a distinct memory structure with communities and then blast it out beyond those communities at reach and frequency and CPMs that keep it salient. And so then you're starting to reposition. It's about who, not how, you're hanging around with. And so what we started to do was see the results. I'm not going to be able to show you this because it's just not time, but it's a beautiful film. And so we started to actually get into culture. And then actually the brand, and it's all for nothing if the results aren't there, right? But the company, the stock market price of the brand went up 29.2% in the first month of the campaign. This is now a Harvard business case study. If you go to Harvard and you do your MBA, you're going to learn Virtue, which is Vice's creative agency, and Lululemon and Kodak, the AI business, repositioning Lululemon in 2018. So look, I'm just going to show you one more. This is FaZe Clan. Beats came to us, said, look, we're running out of ideas during lockdown. What the hell are we going to do? We haven't got a retail environment anymore. This is hurting us badly. We said, okay, what are the new communities that you'd like to go after? That, we started analyzing that. There's absolutely, gaming was exploding, as I'm sure by now is very obvious. But at the beginning of lockdown, it wasn't as obvious that was going to happen. And so we use machine learning and AI to say, like, that's the gaming conversation. We listened, because in order to be seen, you have first to see, right? You have to see in order to be seen. So we basically said, okay, here you go. This is how you go after gaming. The gaming community is frustrated. They're constantly trying to do a 10-hour gaming session, and they haven't got headphones for it. They either destroy the cartilage of their ears if they're over their headphones, but the in-ear headphones, like the ones I'm wearing right now, they just hurt after a while. They just start to hurt your inner eardrum. So we said to Beats, design a new specific Beats Pro gaming limited edition. And then identified that FaZe Clan, which is, I'd never heard of them before, but they're the biggest gaming team in the world, were having their 10th anniversary, little small party during lockdown. And this is what we did.
Yo, listen, I got something crazy I need to show you guys right now. Y'all gotta come out. What do you mean?
Anyway, we dropped a drone with the Beats by Dre special limited editions in the back garden for these guys. I'm just going to show you 1 second. But you can see this is 6.6 million views on this. This is just the first piece of content. And the most important thing to say about this was FaZe Clan did not actually know this was going to happen. One member, we said, just go in the back garden at this time. We didn't say what was going to happen. It was a gift from the brand. And obviously now they have done a partnership, but you can see this military drone just came down, landed, and dropped this new package off. And that started a relationship between the gaming world and Beats that it never had before, and the market share that comes with it. Principle 2, and I know I've got to be quick here, is I love all of us because I feel like we're all frustrated human rights lawyers. But honestly, right now, I think the time is here to say it isn't about purpose. And I know that's controversial. I think it's about more than purpose. It's about contribution. We've got a ridiculous situation now where, we've got like a bag of chips saying like, world peace. It's got ridiculous. It's got preposterous. It's like something from a comedy show now. And what people really, really need is not this right now. What they really, really need is this. They need to be engaged and entertained. And I'm just going to show you that you can do that in a fun way. So, all these brands are doing it in a way that isn't necessarily super worthy. It's just an awesome contribution to culture. I'm just going to really quickly show you this. A car company came to us, and we realized that the voice system, the kind of personal assistant in the car, very high-end car, was either male or female. And we said, why can't we have a third option? Why can't there be a third option gender assistant, a genderless neutral assistant? So again, I think this is going to play from the wrong point in the video. Yes, it is. But basically, it was extremely well received. The earned media on it was phenomenal. We won 4 Cannes Lions. But the idea is so simple. It's just about contributing to culture. It's not about sitting smoking a joint and wondering what your brand purpose was. It was about saying, I'm not going to be able to show this, unfortunately. And then you don't have to be super purposeful either. For this one with Diesel, we put 26 styles of dance in one video together. during lockdown on rooftops. You can see this is all socially distanced. And what was amazing was people just loved it. Like, it's had an obscene number of views, like, you know, and much of that has been organic and not as paid as you would want. Obviously, we can use paid media and we're a media company, but a lot of that is earned and shared and owned and not just paid. And so this one, just the final thing to say about this, the 26 styles of dance that are in this video, the A to Z of dance, we're now matching each of these pairs up. So we're saying, what if we get a ballet dancer to hook up with a Brooklyn street dancer, you know, beat boy, and create what is the new style of dance that mixes Parisian ballet with Atlanta hip hop? Or what if we get a ballroom dancer to collaborate with a with a Bhangra dancer? And so that's phase two of the campaign. And what's beautiful about it is that it doesn't have to be a worthy contribution. It doesn't have to be a super purposeful thing, but people love it. They're like, you're progressing our culture. This is awesome. And this has had literally 10 million views by now. So just final principle. It's about, I believe right now, it's time to look into the holy grail of entertainment and look. By the way, I love advertising. I think some of the greatest things ever made at advertising. I still think that advertising will always have a role. I think TV has a great role, but I would say that 20% budget, you need to be more experimental and stop making media plans that come out of 2010. And I think that entertainment is the approach there. And the reason for that is we have such a fractured media environment now. It's impossible to cut through. And the people who are winning, they're pretty good at it, right? And we spent, 570 million on content this year. We made Gangs of London, which is on Sky. We made the Netflix documentary Fire Festival. We made the Beastie Boys thing that's on Apple Plus. We made the Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. But we made some pretty serious shit, and yet we're nothing compared to Amazon and Netflix and the others. And there's more and more people entering this market, and you're competing with such a difficult environment. And of course, for $5.99 a month, I don't have to consume any ads. Let's not forget this. I can literally go day to day and not consume an ad. And so Scott Galloway says advertising has now become a tax that lands on the digitally illiterate and the poor. It's brutal, but it's interesting. And so what we have now is the situation where we're so used to paid media, we don't know how to earn it anymore. And so my thing to you guys would be, honestly, remind yourself of the power of entertainment. Jaws completely dropped people wanted to go on beach holidays. Philadelphia completely reframed the question around HIV and AIDS. Day After Tomorrow is 20 times more effective than any climate report in bringing that issue to the masses. You want to talk about Byron Sharp, reach and frequency, distinct memory structures, building ideas, owning that little heuristic in the brain. Nothing does it like entertainment. On every single part of Byron Sharp's model, entertainment decimates advertising. And so Supersize Me, you know what it did for McDonald's. Blackfish pretty much ended SeaWorld. Bambi destroyed the hunting industry for about 5 years after it was announced. Call the Midwife, it was a 50% increase in people wanting to be a midwife. Females started applying to the FBI after Silence of the Lambs, and 500% more people wanted to be a pilot after Top Gun. And then Rebel Without a Cause invented the word teenager. Sideways completely changed the story of Pinot Noir in America. Spectra did something in Mexico that's too boring to mention. And then bad stuff. So the Nazis got to power under partly as a result of a piece of genius, but a terrifying, horrible piece of genius by Goebbels called Triumph of the Will. The KKK first recruited using a movie. And of course, let's not forget, and I'm happy to go here, all of us were hoodwinked, or some of us were hoodwinked, not in this room, I hope, by a complete joker because of a piece of entertainment. So my thing to you would be, and by the way, right now, chess, absolutely exploding because of the Queen's Gambit on Netflix. So if you're in the chess business, good time to be in it. So here's what's happening. And, ASOS started as seen on screen. There's millions of examples, right? Entertainment has insane power to change minds. It goes under the radar of human suspicion. And it's able to do things that not many campaigns can do. I'm just going to show you, Cinderella has the same model as Fight Club. And yet I go to brand after brand, agency after agency. They don't know how to tell a story. They just know how to do a 90-second distinct ideas, but it doesn't actually count as a story. And if you look at the great work, whether it's Dove Beauty Sketches or P&G, Like a Girl or any of that stuff, it lives on in evergreen ROI because it is a story. So I'm just going to finish by saying, look, entertainment asks different questions. We made something, a brand came to us and said, look, we're a weed brand in California. We created a museum of weed. Now, obviously, weed in Europe is still illegal. In California, it's legal. So I just got to remind you that, the society is moving on. And And we made a museum of weed. I'm not going to show you the video, but basically, this actually got people queuing, paying $30 every day. This was sold out for 8 months before lockdown happened. And it will open again as soon as lockdown ends, or, when we can safely open it again. So literally it was marketing that was paying for itself. And final thing, Dubai Tourism came to us, said, we've got a bit of an image problem. We're still seen as a place that might be a bit too, machoistic, a bit too, on the wrong side of history in terms of female empowerment. So we got Rita Ora to film her new music video there. And you'll see in a second, every single scene is full of real life ladies from the UAE and from the Emirates who genuinely are really playing the role of what they do in real life. So they're mechanics, it shows you that, people have real jobs and they do amazing things and et cetera, et cetera. So we really landed this. And the sentiment on the video, as you can see here, this has had like 27 million views now. The sentiment on the video is insane. It's saying like, yes, people are landing how much they love Dubai because it's a Dubai tourism ad, of course. But they're also saying, I'm so proud to be a Muslim woman who wears a hijab. Isn't this amazing? This is the best thing I've seen. It's really representing Muslims in the right way. So anyway, final thing, we were working with L'Oreal. We said to them, look, you need to take this entertainment first approach. Don't just get a good looking lady because she's good looking. So we'd been tracking Lizzo, writing articles about her. One of the curses of Vice is you see things very early, way before the boardroom does. We said, we promise you, if you put this lady in your campaign, she will speak to that body positivity tribe. Only this, strategically, this brand could do this, Urban Decay. We repositioned the brand, turned it to Pretty Different. We finally got them to agree to it using data and the machine learning, community stuff, saying this is going to explode. 4 months later, she was Times Entertainer of the Year. Right. And she was also at exactly the same time the face of the Pretty Different campaign for Urban Decay. So that is the type of thing that people say, oh, you were lucky. And it's like, well, the more we practice this, the luckier we seem to get. I'm just going to finish by saying that's what I would end with. That's what I would do if I were you guys. And I was trying to update the 20th Century Playbook. And then I'll just say, that's it. I'll send this to you. But it doesn't mean, if you do community-driven storytelling, it doesn't mean you can't finish with Byron Sharp scale play. You do both. So you start with community contributions so you can tell a story at scale later. So it's not one or the other. And then finally, how did that work? We started to grow our business. We went from really, really bad place to a place where we were starting to, take on brands. We became the agency of record for all these brands you can see here. We started to build these things I mentioned here. And then, we started to grow. And it kind of ended last year with this. We're a $5.7 billion business. So the reason I said, I want to try and make this entertaining, but this is as business as anything you're going to hear in the next ever. So I just wanted to finish with that. I hope it's useful, and please hit me up. I want it to be provocative, very Friday, and kind of rip through a lot of information, but hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll send you this deck, and I hope it's been useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Much appreciated. It was very Friday and very provocative and very interesting. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And a cracking way to bring us to a close. We do have an audience question. I have loads of questions, but it's not about me. It's about the audience. So we have a question from Knut at Inspire Me. Hey, Knut, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hey, man. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for this super refreshing messaging. I really love it, and I'm completely on board. And just to add, this is why I really believe in influencer marketing as a part of a bigger mix, because the audience is targeting the creative instead of the creative targeting the audience. It's organic, and I really think that plays into the whole theme you're coming with here. But as you say, this is controversial, and the average boardroom won't necessarily believe this and resonate with this immediately. So what's the first step to kind of get this into the organization and get the company to believe in this and live by it? Yes,
it's a great question. And I feel that marketeers are some of the most, I said, like emotionally intelligent, IQ-wise intelligent people you ever meet, but we're all exhausted, right? And we're all exhausted because we're surrounded by people who are still. And by the way, some of the brand building stuff from the 20th century, we should never get rid of. Like all that stuff I mentioned about insights, reach, light buyers. We need that forever. And there's never a world where we're not going to need it. But I think that the things there's not revolution, there's just evolution of the codes. What we do at Vice and Virtue, our creative agencies, we do this thing called the Vice Open House. And by the way, if anyone wants to do this, you're more than happy to do it. we get a challenge, and we just, on that one challenge, we show how the water would run through the pipes of this playbook. And then the brand kind of goes, oh, interesting. That comes to completely different things. Now, they very rarely go, here's the whole 100% of the budget. But what they do go is, we've got a 20% budget that 80% is going to go on TV. This 20% is to do something that brings that message to life, elsewhere in the rest of the ecosystem. Take that budget. So I think the thing is to be humble and say, look, you're not going to take that TV budget. By the way, nor should you, because I think there's still good evidence that shows that TV is an exceptionally powerful medium. But but there is that 20% budget, I think.
Thank you very much indeed. Knut, thank you very much for your question, sir.
I'll settle for 20%. Anyway.
Exactly.
Thank you, Knut. Take care. Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated. Mark, I just want to ask you, I'm curious because you talked about, kind of don't forget entertainment and all that sort of stuff. And it does feel TV and radio in America and all these sort of things, they all started as ways for advertisers, for brands to kind of get their sort of message across. Do you feel that we've sort of, I know it's a horribly naff question, but do you feel that we've sort of come a bit full circle and that actually those principles right from the start are now the most interesting principles again? The channels might have changed, but the truth is still there.
Absolutely. I mean, P&G invented the soap opera, right? Like the idea that you would, and what do you think Bezos, genuinely, everyone should be asking, what is Bezos, the second biggest content company in the world? Why would Amazon, the platform that sells you stuff, also be in the content game? Two reasons. Number one, because content and shopping are both entertainment. And number thing, it's not long before you're going to be like watching Drive and you're going to go, pause, shop leather jacket. So we're going to see that content will become the delivery mechanism for commerce. It's already happening, but I think that's where it's going. And but for now, content and entertainment content, in terms of the results, we are absolutely, as you say, we're going back to age-old principles. There's nothing new about anything here. It's the classic stuff of we have to fight hard for attention and we have to up our game. And just making that advert that has the distinct messaging, it's not going to cut through.
So what do you recommend for kind of, maybe brands, so, I think there's a lot of glamorous brands, but for brands that are less glamorous, is it about making a contribution and then do we run the risk of heading into kind of brand washing and actually it teetering over into kind of purposeless purpose? How do you recommend for not so glamorous brands? Everything you showed there, by the way, was absolutely amazing, but they're all at the slightly more glamorous end of the brand spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point. We always distinguish between briefs that are about desire and briefs that are about needs, So like if you're going for an insurance policy, it's because you need one, not because you really want one, Or if you're, hate to say it, but if you're Dettol, that Reckitt owns, it's not necessarily. But I actually think that's where, if you look at the D2C brands, by the way, the CEO of the Hut Group has a really good expression for this, which is he says, D2C doesn't stand for direct consumer. It stands for direct community. And if anyone's ever used a Peloton or and now what you're starting to realize is that they are probably the most, because they're the least, I'll give you an example. I'm just going to go here. Toilet paper. I get all my toilet paper from a company that gives 50% of the money to charity to build, I'm not going to name them because it's going to be plugging them, but they basically, you know the company, right?
Who gives
50% of their, exactly, right?
I can name them.
So, exactly, you can. So they give, and so because it's essentially a commodity, I don't care where I get my toilet paper from. It's literally something that doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I would much rather give it to, and Dollar Shave Club proved this as well. Don't forget, Unilever bought that for $1 billion, right? Dollar Shave Club absolutely wiped the floor with Gillette for years with a direct-to-consumer club idea. And look at everything they did. Their advertising was more like entertainment. They had genuine contribution to the world. They were doing all those principles I talked about. They defined the audience much bigger than just men. And they understood their consumer so much better than Gillette did. And I think that you look at those brands now, they're the ones that are killing. And if I was, I hate to say this, if I was Nestle or Unilever or P&G, I'd be paying so much attention to how these small new brands in these highly, especially in the things that are more commodity driven.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Steve. We have one. I think time for one last question, if that's okay with you, Mike. Raphael from Coty.
Hey, Raphael.
Raphael, it is, as Mark pointed out, the question of 2020. Are you on mute?
No, yeah, I was.
Amazing.
Thanks, so my question is, you know, your presentation was fantastic and very inspirational. And I think for marketers everywhere, you see that and you're like, yes, I definitely want to do something like that. But it's a very much a risk/reward scenario, right? And I think that, you know, all of us, you showed a lot of really great examples of this. You know, you do something like this and it's very, very rewarding and you can win really, really big. Or, you know, others, you know, you can have a really big fail. Think of like what happened to Pepsi about a year and a half ago. How do you talk to your clients about that risk and reward and what's that equation and how they have to weigh that? And what do you recommend to us that are, you know, maybe very excited about doing something like this, but it's a challenge?
That's a great question, and thank you so much. I actually had this, just because we were talking about Amazon Prime, Ukonwa, who was with you guys at Coty, is now the CMO of Amazon Studios, right? So her and I had this exact conversation at Cannes. We were like, how can we get, I'm not going to talk too much about Coty, but how can we get Coty to kind of think a bit more, you know, and I should write this book called Insurgency. And it's about people who are in brands who are like, I know there's a better way and I just need to get the brand to change. So what we've done is, and this is why I actually would be quite humble. And the reason why I'm so eager to keep stressing Byron Sharp and how brands grow is because it works, right? Let's not mess about. The guy's a genius. He gave us such a gift. He taught us what to pay attention on and what to not pay attention on, right? But what he didn't do, I think, was teach us what the first part of that model was, which was how do you build a distinct memory structure? He hasn't got a thing to say about that. He's just build a distinct memory structure and refresh it with reach and frequency and keep it salient and top of mind, right? He doesn't say what is a distinct, you know, or he maybe says it's a Pantone with a logo and a, you know, don't change the Tropicana bottle or whatever, right? So one of the things, the reason why I'm so eager to let you understand, the audience understand that I have read my Byron Sharp very, very deeply, and so have we at Vice, is because we know that's orthodoxy where you are. We know that's your flywheel of growth, right? And so don't fuck with that. Like, if I'm honest, don't do anything that's going to slow that growth. So I'm not saying give 100% of your budget to Vice or any one of these incumbents that seems to be doing well right now. I would not advise that, right? That's tactics. But what I would say is work with your great agencies, your Droga 5s, your 72s and Sunnies. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. But you know what? There's that 20% budget. And I think what we have started to learn to do, we have the Vice Academy now, where we'll go in and kind of digitally upskill teams. And as they start to digitally upskill, they go, oh my God, the internet is an interconnected set of networks. And therefore my first job is to create network effects before I hit the big red button of paid. Okay. And so we've kind of like taken this approach. And so we've kind of taken the approach of like, you know, less ranty than I was today, obviously, but actually bringing people in that can walk the teams up the kind of digital, the kind of maturity spectrum, basically. And then once they get to a certain level of maturity, they're like, okay, great, we feel confident. But it's a journey. It really is. And I've got to say, can I just say now, if you're a person in a brand that, and I sense you definitely are, who's kind of thinking sometimes, I love my job, but Jesus Christ, this is taking so long. You're not alone. There should be a therapy session for everybody who's in that position. And we should all meet once a month and have like some kind of like big drinking session, because we're all there with you. And I have so much respect and love for you, because it's easier to just come to work and just go, oh, whatever. But it's so much harder to give a bit of heart and say, I think there's a better way and we can do more. So you have my massive respect.
Thank you very much indeed. And, you know, if you look at that ladder, I mean, the contribution that someone like Coty can make must be enormous. The opportunity there is phenomenal. Thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. And Mark, thank you so much for bringing us to such a fine and stylish close. Really appreciate it. As always, Mark, have a great rest of the day. And it's always great to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.